This hero is the mid player's quintessential hyper-aggressive, dive the tower, outplay your opponents, rotate to the other lanes, blow people up, and just feel like an anime god. What's up, everyone? This is Donnie, aka Elevated, and thank you for tuning into another video on behalf of Dota Alchemy, and thank you as well to Skillshare, the sponsor of this video. I had the privilege of casting the EU qualifiers for the ESL LA Major this week, and it helped me get a good grasp of what the pros believe the meta to be. So I wanted to make a quick video where I give you guys 3 heroes for each of the core roles that the pros value very highly in the current meta, so that you can go out there and carry your pubs, whether you're in the mid, the safe lane, or the off lane. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and just a quick word about Skillshare before we get into it. Skillshare is an amazing and affordable learning platform where anyone can explore and improve at a wide variety of skills and crafts. Joining the Skillshare community gives you access to hundreds of amazing video guides by experts in fields like art, design, business, and so many more. I've personally used the platform to learn a lot more about the business side of YouTube and improve my video editing skills. The first 500 people who click the link in the description below will get 2 free months of Skillshare Premium and access to everything the community has to offer. You'll also support Dota Alchemy directly by doing this. Plus, you might just discover your next passion. I don't know about this thumbnail. I wish I knew how to make better ones for YouTube so people would click on our stuff. Wow, that was really insightful. Perfect. So the first hero that I wanted to highlight for position 1 is Lifestealer. And I know that this hero has been on these meta recommendation lists many times in the past, but that's just because the pros like to favor things that are easy to execute a lot of the time, especially when the pressure is on in these big tournaments. And frankly, there are very few heroes that can beat Lifestealer at that in the current meta, or really in the game of Dota. You can pick this hero early in the draft, you can pick it into somewhat of a counter, you can just kind of lane it against anybody in the off lane without having to worry too much about how your game is going to go. You simply hit creeps, you sustain. If the lane is a little bit too difficult, you can always jungle to recover. And the item build has shifted from the Radiant style to going into an even simpler phase boots into Maelstrom Rush, and then following that up with just some tanky defensive items like Heaven's Halberd, Abyssal Blade, and Mjolnir for extra damage, as well as utility items after that. Some people are even just building a BKB on Lifestealer in many games, because what's better than a little bit of magic immunity? More magic immunity. I think that Lifestealer is kind of the quintessential hero to describe where the safe lane meta is going right now, which is that you can pick a hero that will be fine in most matchups, recover in the jungle if necessary, and can punish or get kills and snowball against very weak off lanes. The second carry that we're going to highlight is none other than Troll Warlord, and as much as it pains me to say this, I am a avid troll hater. I do not like this hero, but this hero is quite good right now, and he was used to devastating effect by OG in the EU qualifiers in particular. They like to run this hero with an Oracle as the position 5, because not only does it give you some kill potential in lane, but the 2 ultimates, Battle's Trance and False Promise, are one of the most broken combos in the game. You pop the ultimate on Troll when he is quite low, Oracle False Promises you to give you enough time to get the Battle Trance off, and then you come back to full health because you lifesteal an insane amount from your ridiculous attack speed. Troll is a hero like Lifestealer who doesn't really care about the matchup in the offlane, and in fact can pressure many offlaners out of the lane due to his ability to switch between ranged and melee forms. And with a good support, or sometimes a couple of supports, we're seeing a few tri-lanes coming back to the meta, Troll can actually snowball quite easily due to his slow and his ability to kill offlaners if they're not careful. I will say that Troll is a little bit more difficult to execute than Lifestealer because he is a strictly single target hero pretty much in team fights. You need your team to set you up with some stuns most of the time to get on top of people, and you also need to know when and when not to use your battle trance. Otherwise, you might find yourself running headlong into 5 enemies while your team retreats. The hero also does provide a good amount of tower push and the potential to do Roshan at a good time, which is an extra benefit of picking up Troll in the carry position. There have always been a couple main heroes that give Troll a lot of issues, but both OD and Pugna are kind of trending out of the meta at the moment, so that's another boost to Troll's popularity at the current time. I will say that itemization on this hero is fairly straightforward. Most people are building Battle Fury at the moment and then transitioning into classic carry stuff like BKB, Abyssal Blade, and any other sort of utility or survivability that you need. But it is a hero that sometimes needs to flex to a more aggressive role and pick up something like a Diffusal Blade or SNY and go for a status resistance build as well. Quite frankly, I'm not a fan of this hero because I don't like the concept of losing control of your carry in the middle of a team fight. However, the fact that I'm recommending it to you guys anyway is a pretty good endorsement to the power of Troll in the current meta. And the third carry that I want to highlight to the horror of every support player watching this video is none other than Slark. And Slark is a hero that has been good for quite some time and continues to be good because of his versatility and the ability to pick him into pretty much any lineup with good impact. Slark is quite good against most of the popular offlaners who tend to be tanky, sustained-based heroes that Slark is happy to feast on and turn their strength into his agility. We're starting to see a little bit more trend of the safe lane becoming a kill lane, even tri lanes coming back a little bit, and that's great news for Slark, who's really happy to start that infinite scaling permanent agility stack as early as possible and can transition to an absolute beast in the mid game if necessary. Of course, you can simply farm up in the jungle if you are against a bad lane thanks to the Shadow Dance regen, and Slark has also turned a bit more into a brawling hero as we've seen a significant shift away from the Shadow Blade style of pickoff that used to be the main way of playing this hero. Now we're seeing a lot of early Diffusal Blades, Wraith Bands, of course, to start the game, sometimes drums, sometimes an SNY, a Mantis style, stuff like that, but mostly just statting up, getting early BKB, and looking to just fight people over and over and over until you become this absolutely unkillable juggernaut of a hero. Moving on to the mid lane, I'm sure nobody is surprised to see me highlighting Void Spirit. This hero has been incredibly strong since it was released into the game, and though it has been subsequently nerfed in several patches since then, it remains one of the best heroes in Dota 2. In the qualifiers, we saw lots of teams abusing this hero in the mid lane, and specifically, I would say that Thompson really is starting to shape the meta on Void Spirit. I got to watch his games firsthand, and he is going for a right-click damage build Void Spirit where he goes 2 null talismans, usually into treads and a wand, followed by a rushed chrysalis, and then will sometimes go for something like Yules to give himself a bit more survivability, but then focuses on stuff like Solar Crest, utility, or even more damage in the form of more chrysalises. This hero is the mid player's quintessential hyper-aggressive dive the tower, outplay your opponents, rotate to the other lanes, blow people up, and just feel like an anime god. And that is why I think this hero will continue to dominate the mid lane meta until it is massively nerfed. I think that the hero is pretty easy to pick up and play and is really forgiving because of how mobile and how many escapes he has available to him. But also he rewards players who are looking to really push their skill cap due to how much outplay potential Void Spirit has. Hero number 2 is Puck, and I think that Puck is basically Void Spirit but slightly worse. Obviously, a couple patches ago when Puck had the insane right-click ability, this hero was extremely overpowered and became very popular and has been subsequently pretty heavily nerfed. It's still one of the best mid heroes in the game. Pros are basically picking this up every time that they can't pick Void Spirit. And it makes sense because it does essentially the same thing that Void Spirit does, which is to crush lanes, play hyper aggressively, rotate around power runes, impact the side lanes, massive teamfight impact, heavy burst damage, and a good amount of control and annoyance and time wasting and space making as well. I really think that Puck will continue to be pretty heavily in the meta based on how most teams are running the game, which is with their mid laner being not so much of a carry anymore, but more of the space maker, the tempo controller. And Puck is currently just about the best hero at doing that in that role. And the third hero on our mid list is really exemplifying why I love the game of Dota 2, because we're seeing this trend of these hyper-aggressive heroes like Puck and Void Spirit who really love to leave the mid lane to impact the other ones, rotating around power runes and creating a lot of space, but spending not so much time in the mid lane after the laning phase. And how do you counter that? By taking their tower. And Death Prophet is probably the best hero at doing that currently in the mid lane. Of course, you just pop Exorcism anytime that pesky Void Spirit goes to gank your safe lane, and you take the mid tower, which breaks open the map and allows your team to invade both enemy jungles with ease. Death Prophet is a hero that also has a great ability to counter some of these slippery heroes early on, which is when Death Prophet is extremely strong thanks to her AoE silence. And there aren't a whole lot of matchups that are bad for DP. Death Prophet is kind of a up-and-coming hero. We didn't see a lot of it being picked, but I noticed it starting to trend upwards in the last day or two of the qualifiers, which shows that teams are starting to adapt to all of this Void Spirit, Ember Spirit, and Puck being picked. And that's a really good trend to be on top of, because generally speaking, when you look at the meta, we have the pub meta, which is quite a bit far behind the pro meta. Then there's a tournament or a bunch of qualifiers, or a big pro team will play certain heroes, and then the pubs will start to pick those heroes. So then if you can pick the heroes that are good against the heroes that the pubs start trending towards, then you're going to be way ahead of the curve and able to crush some of these heroes in lane. So basically, the idea of this hero, and I would expect to see other heroes like maybe Dragon Knight or even some mid Lycan or something like that coming back into the meta, is that when the opposing tempo controller starts to rotate, you just get hyper aggressive, take their mid, and start bashing down buildings, and then you can rotate and just take all the towers on the map while they're trying to fight to get kills. Meanwhile, you're collecting gold for your team, you're collecting map control for your team, and taking over the game that way. Moving on to offlane, we're going to be talking about Slardar first and foremost, because this hero has absolutely taken over the offlane meta in the professional scene. It is being first phase picked and banned in basically every single game that I watched during the qualifiers, and it deserves to be, because it is one of the few offlaners that really gives many of the current safe lane meta heroes problems. Slardar is extremely scary to lane against for heroes like Lifestealer, or really any melee carry, because of how insane Slardar is to trade with. He can chain stun you at level 2. He has BKB Piercing Disable built into his hero on a pretty short cooldown. And if you are somehow unable to dominate the lane as Slardar, you can also pretty easily cut creep waves or rotate, because everybody seems to be maxing sprint these days, which gives him a lot more versatility in where he can be on the map or how you can play him. Maxing sprint also means that you don't necessarily have to rush a blink dagger, though it is okay to do that sometimes, and sometimes it's necessary to have that long range initiation, especially if you have a Lifestealer on your team and you want to do infest bombs. But if you don't need the blink dagger, then you can go for these more brawl-heavy fighting items that we're seeing, like auras such as Vlad's or Pipe or Crimson. Sometimes people pick up an Echo Saber, sometimes people pick up SNY or drums. The point is, pick up fighting items and brawl with your team, which is definitely how the meta has trended for most heroes. We're also seeing pros rushing an Aghanim Scepter, which is one of the really powerful mid-game spikes that Slardar has, where you can just kind of plant yourself in the middle of a team fight or in front of an objective and dare the other team to approach you. And it's pretty hard to push Slardar off of that location, which means that he has a big area denial effect as well. I think that Slardar is probably over buffed at this point. He has gotten the Ice Frog treatment where he was terrible, and then got incremental buffs for many, many patches in a row, and now has numbers that are probably way too high. So if you want to gain a bunch of MMR in the offlane right now, I would say that Slardar is probably your best bet. The second offlane hero that we're going to be talking about is Mars, and what better meta for the Roman god of war to return to than a brawl-heavy fighting one that we are currently deep in the current patch. Mars is a hero that was introduced to the game in a very broken state. He was picked a ton in every role and dominated for a long time, and then was massively nerfed and has been subsequently forgotten about until about the last month or so, when a couple of incremental buffs and a change to Bulwark have made some of the pros start to explore him again. We're seeing a bit of mid-Mars, but offlane Mars is probably still where he belongs, and though he doesn't have the same level of lane domination that somebody like a Slardar has, he does have kill potential with the right support pairing and can at least pressure a carry to not give them a completely free lane. I also think that Mars brings something to the table that we're going to start seeing a lot out of offlaners, which is that you don't have to dominate the lane. You don't have to just straight up win the offlane anymore. It's okay to just go even or just get levels, get a little bit of farm, because this hero doesn't need a ton of farm to have high impact thanks to his very, very good skill set. Just pick up a phase boots and a soul ring, maybe a Vlad's, and eventually a blink dagger, and that's all you really need on this hero to do a lot in any game of Dota. He's got great initiation to start team fights. He can absorb a bunch of damage and harass and spells. He can create a lot of space. He pushes lanes, and he also just gives you the ability to fight pretty much whenever you need to, as long as your ultimate is up. The third offlaner that we're going to be talking about today is Legion Commander. And we've kind of come full circle in the offlane. We had an offlane meta where Legion was good along with the other saving heroes like Abaddon and Omni Knight. And while those heroes are still pretty good, they lack one thing that Legion retains, which is the ability to straight up counter the enemy carry in the late game. Legion Commander's BKB piercing duel and the fact that you can turn the enemy's strength against them means that this hero is going to be relevant no matter how bad of a game she's having. And thankfully, Legion also has the ability to scale with very few items. We're seeing a lot less focus on getting damage, however, on Legion, and mostly all you need to do is just be tanky, kind of a frontliner, save your carry with press the attack, and carry a few auras, which means that you don't necessarily have to feel the pressure of winning every single offlane like you used to. However, if you are a better player than the person you're playing against, or you do have a nice laning setup, you can snowball off of a great laning stage and take over the game as kind of a pseudo carry on Legion Commander. And that's a really nice piece of versatility that makes this hero valuable. We're also seeing the return of heroes like Juggernaut and Lifestealer, as well as just these big hyper carries that want to farm up a bunch, get a BKB, and take over the game. And Legion Commander has always been good against that style of play. I also really like the fact that Legion Commander has a hard lockdown for all of these slippery heroes that are super popular in the meta, and if you are able to amass enough gold to get a Blink Dagger, then it's extremely easy to take out these heroes that are annoying your team, such as the Rickies, the Void Spirits, the Pucks, and the Slarks. So if you are lacking lockdown on your team, if you are lacking a hard counter to the enemy carry, if you are lacking a stable offlaner that has the ability to survive, can function well regardless of how much farm you have, Legion Commander is still a great option for winning MMR in the offlane.